Welcome to the Counterweight podcast. I am Doug Rogers, Chief Revenue Officer and Managing Partner for Waypoint Healthcare Solutions. And I'm joined weekly by my co-host, James Canary, founder and owner of the Upper Right Corner. Together, we are focused on speaking to and learning from growth leaders across the healthcare space about their journeys and lessons learned. James and I want to explore how growth leaders manage this tension, not only for their teams, but also with their leaders and in many cases, board members and investors. We will discuss with our guests the career journey they have been on, key influences that helped them put them into the position they are today. We will talk about successes and challenges, what they learned from these events for themselves and for their teams. Join us each week for a new episode with our guest. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, Instagram, and LinkedIn under the name The Counterweight Podcast. Subscribe, like, follow, and give us feedback as we go along. Now on to the show. Hello and welcome to the Counterweight Podcast. My name is Doug Rogers, and I'm joined by my co-host, James Canary, and we are super excited on this sunny day, which is a bit of an anomaly here lately, but this sunny day here in Kansas City to welcome, there you go, let the light shine. Let the light shine.
Window shade.
Yeah, with that exclamation, we are pleased to welcome Andy Rellihan to the pod. It is fantastic to have you. Thank you for making the time and spending this 90 minutes, could be 60 minutes. We don't know how long this is going to take with us. So Andy,
Could be hours.
it could be hours. I think we've got plenty to talk about. We already know that we at least have a half day worth of content. So buckle up. Let's do this.
Let's go.
So Andy, why don't you tell our listeners who you are, what you're doing these days, what company you're with, and then we'll dive right in.
Yeah, Andy Rellihan, Chief Commercial Officer at Payground. So
That's a big title.
big title.
Yeah.
We have kind of a few different tags. So one thing we'll say is we're a healthcare payment network. Talk about what that means.
Mm-hmm.
And we like to say that we're the digital wallet or healthcare's digital wallet, I should say. And
all right.
So the simple way is, every single time we go pay a medical bill, we have to go to each individual portal, unless everybody happens across your care continuum happens to be in one organization. It's a very fragmented experience. The bills show up at different times. You never really know what you owe until that bill shows up.
And then you may not even really understand what you owe at that point.
So wait, don't you just do what I do and not pay them?
You're not supposed to admit that.
Or maybe at all? Okay. Oh, sorry.
Actually,
a lot of reasons why people don't pay or they delay paying is because they don't know. They're confused. Should I pay it? Has insurance been paid? It's for all the effort and energy we've spent cobbling together clinical data, we have yet to do that for the financial side, for the patient's benefit, right?
Yeah. Well, I think that last piece is critical. Yeah. For the patient's benefit.
For the patient's benefit.
Yeah, absolutely. So guide us a little bit. How long has Payground been in existence?
Payground, Drew, our founder, started it in 2019 and it launched in this really interesting time, 2020.
Yeah, it was something
happening.
I don't really remember.
Yeah.
Seems like a great time.
If you guys forgot, it was COVID-19. Yeah.
It rings a bell.
I've heard of it somewhere.
So what they did was they found to get going and just start a business was to go around in the local market, the company's based out of Phoenix or a suburb of Phoenix, was to go around and help doctors who were collecting checks have an easy way to collect online. That's how it was started with a very, very simple value prop, which is, hey, the world's changed. We can solve this in a simple way. Let's start there. And oh, by the way, we still have this vision, and COVID kind of delays us getting to the vision, but we can get started doing something very, very simple and very practical for really small independent physician practices who just need, I don't have anybody to help me collect. I had a very manual process and need something a little bit more digitally automated. And so that's how it started.
Yeah. And I imagine the average person probably wouldn't appreciate how much of a challenge that was for a doc's office at the time. They would probably, well, I go to the restaurant and I pay with my card, or, Apple Pay was very much a thing at that time, or, we were starting to tap, et cetera, et cetera. And I don't think that people appreciate how much friction there still is in healthcare to just simply pay for a service.
Yeah. In most, especially on the smaller clinic side, right? Large enterprises are doing a little bit more digital automation and trying to go change the patient financial experience. But a lot of small practices are still the main way they try and collect a patient balance is through a paper statement. And, that could get to you 30 to 60 days after. I mean, a lot of those statements come for a month. Selling EMR technology for a long time, that was an afterthought. They almost just said, okay, can you do statements? Yeah, we can do statements. Well, the experience for the patient wasn't even really thought of for a long time as everyone went to go adopt an EMR. How the patient paid, it was all about insurance and getting insurance payments.
Yeah, making sure the claim
sure the claim
was clean,
got out the door cleanly.
The bill dropped. Okay, We're done. Right? It's
exactly.
like, okay, done. Yeah. So we're moving into we are in a consumer first era. People are making decisions. They have options where they spend their time. They vote with their wallet or their Medicare Advantage plan or whatever. So I want to talk more about kind of how the company's evolved from helping those independent physicians in the greater Phoenix area to now. So I do want to get to that. But before we do, you joined Payground. You had options where you could go and where you could take your talents.
In theory,
Yeah. So what drew you to that environment? You had been on you've got experience in the large corporate environment. This is very different. Earlier stage companies. Kind of talk about that decision process and what that's like.
Having been in the large stage environment, I think what you realize, I had a middle stop between Payground and Cerner where, I was. What you realize is the large company probably taught me more around sales process, forecasting process than I realized. And I knew enough or something, and I wanted to go somewhere smaller where I could feel my impact every day. And going smaller where you can have your impact felt was important. That was one. And then, are we doing something that feels like it's worthwhile to the betterment of healthcare, right? And so when Drew, it's just kind of funny how things come together, right? I get paired up with Drew through an old connection that we all know, and Caleb Anderson.
Never heard
of that guy.
Yeah.
Questionable.
But questionable is nice.
Yeah. We need to check.
That needs to stay in the podcast.
Sorry,
Everybody
Caleb. We know you're listening.
Questionable.
I think we can find
Caleb,
a picture.
This is our ask for you to be a guest.
Yeah.
That's right.
But it comes together, and you hear the story that Drew went through, and this is Drew's story, which is he has stage 2 cancer. 2 weeks later, wife gives birth to baby number 3. 21 bills later, he decides after. I always kind of joke, you went through cancer and your wife has a baby, 2 very, very major life moments, and you decide to start a patient payment company. If that doesn't tell you what is wrong with how we pay for healthcare, what else could possibly tell you what's wrong, right? So you hear his story, and then he's a dad of 4, I'm a dad of 4, and you go through pain for a child. And each time I'm thinking, surely I'm not the first one that's had a baby at your hospital, or my wife's had a baby at your hospital where we have to then pay for it, as if the insurance company doesn't know that the baby didn't exist, a few weeks ago, and now you're sending me this bill. It's just the experience 4 times over was just as maddening with kid 1 as it was kid 4. It didn't get any better. Wow. And it didn't really matter what EMR they were on.
And that is a very expensive way to test the system, I might add. Having more children and seeing if it gets better.
One more time. Let's see if it's any better.
I've got 5 kids, and I could have already told you the billing doesn't get better.
No, it doesn't. And so when he says the story and he tells me his story, you connect with it almost immediately. Like, I don't need to know everything about there is to know about revenue cycle, although I know something above nothing, or all things patient financial experience. It was like, I've lived it. And, we talk about it all the time at Payground, which is like everyone here has lived something through paying a bill and none of it's positive. Right?
I think you're going to get a lot of agreement there,
Yeah.
a lot of alignment there. So the mission was definitely the sense of purpose, utilizing your skills, having more of an impact in a company that's earlier stage where you have a chance to shape that. So that all sounds good. What's been maybe the biggest surprise or difference for you, having grown up more in the corporate environment? Now you're part of this growth engine, and you're going to feel it, right? More.
Yeah.
The ups and the downs. What's been the biggest surprise for you?
It's a good question. I think the surprise came with, we can tell that story, right? I can tell my story. Drew can tell his story, and everybody can immediately connect to it. And they might say, that's really awesome, right? But ultimately, I need to maximize my revenue, right? Healthcare is still a business, so we need to go make money, and I need to hear that your solution can go make money, right? So I don't even know if that's the biggest surprise, but it's been more of like okay, how do we continue to evolve what our message is, and how do we go connect with our buyers such that we have to go provide them immediate value. If we don't do that, then we don't really get to earn our way to do the really, really cool things that we want to do. So we have to provide immediate value today. And so it's been more a shift of like, let us tell you how we can provide immediate value to you, and we can get you ROI, and we talk through that. And then, oh, by the way, if we do that, we want to earn the right to be able to go make it even better for the patient.
Right. So the alignment of mission and margin there, right, is as compelling as the story is, right, is you still need to create value, tangible value for organizations that already have. They have a lot of issues, they have a lot of priorities, and they have very low margin.
Yeah. Yeah. And their problem, the problem that you just described, James, is very real. And the network effect itself doesn't solve that problem, at least not right away, right? Like over time, do I think it will? Do I have a really strong hypothesis that it will? Yeah, because I've sat in enough conversations over the last 15 years where you hear about all the network friction connectivity and what hospitals believe and doctors' offices and everybody believes that can do on both the clinical and financial side. So I think it's a little bit more than hypothesis that is something that will resonate. But the near-term pain is I need to collect dollars, and I need to collect them more efficiency. And I have to provide the right option for the right patient at the right time to help them with this, increased burden they have to go pay for healthcare. So we have to meet them there. And if we can meet them there, we can earn the right to go do the next.
Good. That's good.
First of all, for our audience, especially those either who are in the early stage of building or you have aspirations to build, one of the things that certainly rings true, Andy, with what you just described is that I think it is relatively easy to find a personal pain point with the healthcare system and build a mission around it, because we all interact with healthcare, especially here in the United States. There's a lot of complexity there, and there's a lot of friction points that you are always going to run into. The hard part is that the mission that you are trying to solve does not always equate to what is actually going to make money or allow a physician practice, a specialty practice, or a hospital to financially survive. And I think that is a hard thing for founders sometimes to get their head around, is how do I equate? This is going to make the healthcare so much better.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to buy it because it doesn't make them better today in terms of dollars and cents. Why don't you talk about, because you alluded to this, how have you thought about, and what's been some of the exercises that you've gone through with the team to refine that mission, to that messaging, if you will, to still maintain the spirit of the mission, but get much more crystal clear in terms of the impact in the here and now with your prospects or respective clients?
Yeah, that's good. We talk a lot about what problem are we really solving? Right.
Yeah.
And it sounds so obvious, right? I've had 4 kids. It was really painful, but like, okay, for that's, I'm the patient, but for those who are going to actually buy for the service, like what pain and what problem do we solve? And does it create enough value? And can we articulate the value story clear enough that they want to work with us, right? And again, to your point, like that sounds obvious and easy, and it it's not to say that it's not there.
Yeah,
it's there, but
you probably spent, and not just you, but you, members on the leadership team, members on the sales team, etc. I imagine, not to put words in your mouth, but there was an iterative process, time spent. Hey, this messaging kind of works, but doesn't really work. Let's go back to the lab, no pun intended, and sit in the room in the whiteboard and try this messaging. It actually takes real time to hone in on the thing that's of value to the person that's buying, even if you feel like it should be really, really obvious.
Yeah, no, that's right. So that of like, okay, what problem do we solve? And then the flip side of that is like, well, what, and then a slightly different way to ask that question is, well, what value are we providing? And can we prove it? Can we say, we know enough, we think these are the characteristics that this segment of healthcare has, whether it be a small clinic, a community hospital, large IDN, lab, ambulance, EMS, whatever, right? Can we prove it? Because different specialties, different types of healthcare, some might collect more at the point of service, some might collect more pre-sale, some might do more post-sale. So can we say to our specific individual person that we're talking to, this is the value that we create for you. This is how we make it easier. This is how we make it more efficient. This is how we can solve your specific problem. And so pairing the data that we have, what we know about our existing clients, and reinfusing that value back into our sales process is so critical. And I would say right now today, we have more work to do with that. I was
like, is it like in an earlier stage company, are you doing that more frequently? Right? Because I think of like more mature companies probably have some rhythms there, right? Where there's maybe quarterly or annually, or they're tying it to themes or to campaigns or to new product launches. What's the drumbeat like there for you? Like, is it weekly where you're kind of making those
for some of our customers, we try and do a check-in after go live at 30 and 90 days, especially for smaller clients. And then for some of the bigger customers, and we'll send them a report every other week. That's like, this is what we did. This is the progress, right? And some of that is just like, well, that's where we're at. But what you really want, you kind of itches at you is like, I want to provide more value, right? This like, okay, there are more things that we're doing that we're not capturing, or we're not capturing at a scaled way, right? That you want to be able to say, because you're like, I know we're making things better, and you hear things, right? But you can't quite quantify all of those things yet.
It's not captured in a survey or in a report. But that's an important topic. Like, how do you, because that is the name of the game here, right? Because you have to prove your value, and you have to maintain your value, because otherwise, if you show up as a line item and all of a sudden the client just sees the invoice, what are we doing here? Like, why are we paying for this? Right. So you're constantly having to look over your shoulder. So how do you do that? Like, how do you capture that in a way where you can quantify that value?
I mean, there are things that are easier for us to quantify, meaning like without any previous data from the client, there are things that we know, right? So we can look at and see, well, how many patients pay within the first day or week, right? Meaning
not James.
We've already learned James doesn't
6
pay.
months, I'm telling you right now, don't wait.
James doesn't pay. And so
maybe if he had the Payground app, he would.
Yeah,
I mean, today, clearly, I don't know. In 6 months, yes.
But there are things today that we know where how fast they pay, how they pay. There's stuff that we just know because they interact, so we have that data, right? So we can start using that to tell our stories and then segmenting it where does it break down by bill size, by specialty, by, various ways that we could segment it so that we can be more specific. So that we can do today. That's time and energy. And over time, we can make that data more automated, right? But then you start to kind of think, well, as you hear of problems and you talk to clients, you're like, okay, I think we can solve that. And I think we're doing a good job of that, but you may not have the data points to prove it. And so those are the things where I sit there and say, we can do more and we need to do more. But that, so you're a little bit limited and you got to work with what you have first and just lean into it, because it's like, well, we know we do this well. We can execute here.
All three of us have been in big co's and small companies and in between. Andy, I think one of the things that I've certainly come to appreciate in the smaller organizations is that the speed at which you can hear something from a client, realize that it's impactful, not just for that client, but other clients in terms of how your product or your service provides value, and then internalize that back into the team is so much faster, or has the ability to be so much faster in a early stage, mid stage startup, if you will, than it does for a big company. And like I that's exciting. It comes with its other challenges. You don't have sometimes all the infrastructure around it, et cetera, but the fact that you can just move that quickly to hone in and refine your messaging is certainly a wow factor, if you will, being in a small co. Guide us a little bit. You gave an overview of what Payground does, the value, the mission, if you will, that it's living into. Who's your target market? You mentioned several organizations. Who are you ideally selling to in the healthcare space?
Yeah. We are starting, just the buyer type would be the, director of finance, VP of finance, CFO. That may not be where we start, but really financial buyer in a healthcare organization. We talk a lot about ICP, ideal customer profile. We talk a lot about market segmentation, and we talk about focus. So the other thing I would say, you'd say, hey, the problem and the value props, the value story you're telling, Doug, you said it's hard. I would say the focus element of where you go spend your time and energy in a small company that's probably been the biggest, eye-opening challenge for me, right?
I feel that.
In a big co, you're almost expected to go hit, and you've got market verticals that can go scale those markets really, really quickly. And so it's been a very, very iterative process for us. And I would say still is an iterative process for us to go say, this is the market, right? I look at that in two areas. One is direct providers, which is, can they make fast decisions?
Yeah.
For big IDNs, I love them all. Love to have them all on Payground.
Long sales cycle.
Very, very long sales cycle. So we have to be very wise with our resources to not just burn all our time on 12 to 18 month sales cycles. Do they have something, as much as I'd like to say everything we're doing today is like totally, totally unique, are we different enough from their current state that they want to work? So what's their current bill pay solution? What's their current EMR mix? So those, can we go easily get the data to drive our workflow today? So those are some of the ingredients we look at like out of the gate. And then the other thing we do is we do a number of partnerships. So we have a number of partnerships today where we connect into their tech stack. Either that could be a direct EMR like technology company, or it could be an RCM company. The interesting thing, kind of one of the things that we've seen with RCM is, well, they spend a lot of time and energy on the insurance side.
Yeah.
And then they don't necessarily have the tech, or not all of them have the tech around the patient payments. So we can be an augment to the value that they create, and we can make it more efficient for them to go collect dollars for the patient and the insurance side. So that's been a really, really good. Usually when we talk to RCM, there's a lot of small RCMs. There's big ones that are name brands out there. There's lots of small ones that as soon as we tell them what we do, we get immediate interest. So, where we can augment the value and we can drive integration quickly, that's huge for us at small, early stage company.
I think that would be important because those RCM consultants, organizations spend a lot of time improving processes, clean claims, all that stuff. And they could do all of that perfectly and fully optimize it and get robotic process automation, all that other stuff going. At the end of the day, there's still a patient payment component to this that
right.
We're talking about significant dollars, especially with the growth of high deductible health plans. More of the burden is being pushed on the consumer, right? All of these different plans that require consumers to absorb more of the cost. And so that still has to be paid. And that's where you come in. Sounds like.
Yeah. And so, if we make each other more competitive, right? If we we augment each other's value prop, and we can drive towards an integrated, automated offering, that for us is a good recipe for success. It's a place to start. It's a place to have a lot of really thoughtful conversations, and that usually leads to how do we then tell the value story together, right? Because our value should plug in and almost fit seamlessly with the value that you're telling, because then it's just you're expanding the value you're creating, right?
Makes sense. Yeah, makes sense. I like this thread that we're on around value, and I want to come back to how you do that with your prospects and partners. But I want to go back a little bit in time and talk about you, like your journey. Like when you were 8 years old, did you just kind of wake up and go, you know what? I want to be a chief commercial officer someday.
Yeah, I did.
Is that somewhere you had like a poster? So my favorite line from Glenn Ross: first prize, Cadillac Eldorado. Second prize, set of steak knives. Third prize, you're fired.
Is that
how you run your sales?
Yeah, no, that's exactly it.
That's your sales meeting right there.
Yeah, that's exactly it. It's not what you dream of, but I do think in an interesting way, if I like tried to connect the dots, like what I thought I was going to be when I was 8 was I was going to be a pro football player. And like, it turns out, like, other than maybe like Wes Welker, there's not a lot of 5'9", tiny guys out there playing wide receiver in the NFL. So that
they all play quarterback.
Yeah, not the 5'9" ones. So I you learn that, but what you learn is you learn how to compete, and you learn that you have this appetite for competition and winning, and you have a motor, and you're self-driven. All of those things tend to play really, really well in a competitive sales world. And so, you get into a competitive situation, man, do I hate losing, right? And it's like, you're going to roll up your sleeves, and you're going to figure out what do you need to win. And over time, what you've learned with your sales career, it's not really like trying harder. It's like working smarter, and working smarter with the client actually is the competitive advantage. And so that's been kind of the evolution, but it is this like competitiveness that I think.
So that sounds like it's been there for you. The competitive nature, you've had that inside of you since a young age. Like, when did you know, hey, I can be a sales professional? Like, I can actually make a career out of being a growth professional, a sales professional.
Well, I mean, this takes us back to where we were all at for many years. You go do consulting work, and what I realized really quick was I was not good at that. Like, delivery consultant, build, like, you go to a few client meetings and you're like, okay, I'm
not built that way.
I'm not built that way.
Which is almost as powerful of a learning as learning what you are good at.
Well, yeah, it was like, I think I had a project one time where they were like, I was supposed to do all this build, and I'm sitting there going, this is going to take me like 6 months. And it turned out I was doing it manually. And there was this, like, if I knew how to do the query upload, which I didn't, right? I was not good at it at all. And I'm like, I have to go to sales or I'm going to fail. And I certainly didn't want to fail, but yeah, that was kind of how it started. And you had some people that I knew me that were like, hey, you should go into sales, you should go through this program. And Cerner had a great sales training program.
That was the client representative program,
right? And so I I was, I went through that class of 2009 B. And
okay, yeah.
Not because you were like second rate, but because it was the second part
It was
of the
the second
year.
class, 2009 A and 2009 B. So that was, I guess, how it started. It wasn't like, the NFL dream died and the sales dream picked up. It was landing at Cerner, and quickly realized that was a much better fit for me than,
being a wide receiver.
Then doing queries and whatever
also
those
being a
sheets
consultant.
were.
Yeah, that's right.
Or being a delivery consultant. Yeah.
Yeah, sounds like a patient care hazard right there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So with that formative experience, and once again, I encourage for all of our listeners, I think that learning where you are not as skilled and that you don't derive joy, I think those things are equally important, is as powerful, if not more so, as learning where you have abilities and where you draw joy from. Because I think many times we don't understand the areas that are not great fits for us until we get later in life, and then it causes some pitfalls. So I encourage, I think that's a great learning experience, Andy, that you went through. As you fast forward and thinking about going through the client rep program and then being a sales professional and then growing into leadership, as you hire new individuals, what are the things then that you look for? How do you assess talent that you're looking to bring onto the team?
It's a good question. I would say the first thing is energy. Like, if I don't sense energy in the first couple minutes, it's probably, you could know the market inside out. You could know all these things, and maybe you've sold before, right? You might have even hit 100% because you landed some big deal. But if there's not energy overcomes a lot. That's number one. Number two is the willingness to learn. And so you want to go learn and you want to be really good. If you understand the problem that you're solving for better than anybody else, it's a really, really good place to be, no matter where you're selling. And that is like almost universal, I think, that go learn the problem, go study the problem, go talk to people about the problem, and you'll surprise yourself how easy that is. But it takes energy and self-motivation to do. I could tell you as a leader, hey, I really think you should go do this. And you should. But what's even better is like you are motivated enough that you have this burning desire to go do it yourself.
Right. And like you have to have humility to do that, right? Because you could end up going into a situation where you're not the expert. You don't have all the right answers. And it's humbling to do that, right? Even advanced in our careers, right? To do that. And so you got to have that combination. It sounds like of sort of energy, hunger, humble, hungry, smart, right? So you'll like this being a fellow football coach. By the way, last time I saw Andy in person, we were both picking up our trophies for our respective teams who had their flag football division. You coach a little different age group, I think, so we're not going to play.
Third grade Cougars won 7-1 this year. First place.
Third grade Cougars.
Yeah, for all the
I had a
fourth grade fans listening out there.
Fourth grade KC Lightning. But this is my team from a couple years ago. You'll appreciate this, Coach. Is what do you see there on our theme for the year?
Well, hungry, smart.
Hungry, smart. Right? Is we wanted our kids to exhibit those characteristics. And, hey, we've never arrived. Even if we win, we know we're not done, right? Humble, I don't have it all figured out. Smart in the Lencioni language. Lencioni's really talking about like people smarts, not IQ, as just understanding others and having the ability to be agile and those things. But sounds like you look for those characteristics in your...
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's like those things seem universal. Like you could put those types of people in almost any situation and they're going to figure it out and thrive.
Yeah, I would agree with that. All the football talk. So one, I don't coach a youth football team. I did not play football, but I am an avid football watcher. So, that's my contribution. But one of the phrases that I pick up in being an avid football watcher is they talk about a strong internal motor with recruits or candidates. And Andy, that's what I hear, or that's what I think about when you talk about energy, is that you've got this innate motor that's just constantly running. As an aside, when I interview people, this is a small thing, but I look for the individuals that their leg is constantly doing this. They've got so much energy that they can't stop moving in some form or function.
Good.
And that tells me, hey, that individual, he or she is not going to stop because they can't. Their body just can't. They may not always be doing what I want them to do, but they're going to be doing something. And if I can channel that, then I think we can get a great outcome.
Are you sure you just don't make them nervous?
It could be that. It could be that.
What's happening right now, Doug?
Let's unpack that a little bit, Doug.
What's going on?
That's not really the direction of the pod. Thank you very much.
Okay.
It's not this is not a
This is your podcast.
exercise.
I'm just
Welcome
listening and
to
observing.
Interview Tips with Doug Rogers. Right. keep your leg moving.
No.
Yeah. So Andy, guide us a little bit in your current role. What's the scope of your role? So what teams do you have responsibility for?
Sure. And these aren't massive teams, but we have partnerships, all of our sales, which pretty much all of our sales is new business. It's not like we have, especially at this stage, we don't have tons of like land and expand. We have really...
You're really new logo capture at this stage in your growth. Yep.
Yeah. I think over time we'll have some inside sales or like some upsell, land and expand. So partnerships, and that's cultivating new partnerships, managing existing partnerships, new logos, and then marketing.
All right, fantastic. So within that span of control, I want to go back to a couple of things that we were talking about, which is you had described one of the biggest challenges, and it really resonated with me, which is how do you create focus? And look, I spent a little bit of time on Payground's website trying to familiarize myself with the type of work that you do, et cetera. And one of the things that I saw when I dropped down, who do we serve? There was a list of organizations, hospitals, physician offices, revenue cycle companies, digital health companies, patients. As you work with your team, and especially I love this combination that you own marketing and then you own sales and you own partnerships. What's the journey? How do you as a leader guide them or set focus or set them on the direction to create that focus on here's where we spend our time and don't get distracted by these things over there?
Yeah. One of the things we did at the end of the year was we had our kind of end of year wrap around, our performance, what we did. We talked about kind of all the things. We looked at some of the data points that we had. And amongst the entire team, we just said, okay, let's talk through what are the ingredients of things where things are working really, really well. And let's unpack why are they working well. So the goal there was not for me to say, this is the answer, right? Like I have the answer. And I, as your leader, I want all of you to believe what I think. And my hope was that they come to the same conclusion that I did, right? So as we talk about it, we all sit around and we can say, well, gosh, these are the things. If we did more of this, this is going to be this is what we need to do. This is our keys to success. And so at the same time, it was, well, what are the things we're doing or partners we're chasing or clients we're chasing where it's just not working, right? Maybe the product's not there. Maybe the partner's not a good fit for whatever reason, but we don't have this massive team. So let's not burn our time on things that we shouldn't burn our time. So we kind of asked ourselves both sides of those things. And we went through, well, why do we believe that? So what data do we have to support, the things we should focus more time on, the things we shouldn't focus more time on, right? And we looked at it and we documented it and we took time, we came back a week later and reflected on it to say like, okay, do we still all agree? And so that was one where it's like, it was the goal was just to go get alignment. Like, are we aligned in the charge for 2025?
Nice.
It is perfect.
That's a really good.
Yeah.
Well,
it's not perfect, but again,
and you're never done, right? Because you got to go back and check. Because what's working now might not work 6 months from now. But I've used a model in client interactions and strategy of working, broken, missing, confused. So what's in each of those categories, right? Well, if it's working, do we want to keep doing it? Sounds like we do. How do we codify that? Broken is, so, where are we wasting our time, spinning our wheels, pushing rocks up a hill? Let's stop doing that. Missing. What are we missing right now? What do we need that we don't have? Tools, whatever. And then confused. Is there any misalignment, confusion, especially when you get partners, which I'd love to talk more about with you. Like, how do you maximize partnerships? Because I feel like that can go off. That's an area where it can really be helpful, especially when you're in startup or scale up mode. But it could also be a real pain in the rear if there's not alignment, and it could become a distraction or it could become confusing to the market. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on partners too.
And we had when I first started, we had some really, really good, and they still are really, really good partners, right? And then we had other partners where it's like we weren't really getting anything out of it. And it's not necessarily on anyone, it's just we weren't aligned. So that's where it's like, well, why is that? Well, we're not integrated, and maybe they had another one that was, right? We ran into that.
So that's awkward. It's like, oh yeah, we got an integrated one and a non-integrated one. Which one do you want?
Yeah.
I want the one that's really hard.
Yeah. You want the manual one?
We run towards complexity. Yeah.
Yeah. And so we just had these situations where it was like, okay, we had these partnerships, and then there wasn't, again, well, why did they pick us, or what did they see in us? That was undefined. What are our goals? How are we going to be working with them? A lot of that was somewhat undefined. And so you start to go look at that and you say, okay, well, if we are going to partner with somebody, we would rather have fewer partnerships where we have mutual alignment, we have a mutual value story, we make them better, they make us better, right? And for us right now, they make us better means they might offer more things, or they offer services, and then we make the services more competitive, right? We give them a competitive advantage because, well, we are smaller. And so we have some of that. And so what we had the fortune of towards the end of last year was we signed a few more partnerships that were aligned to those kind of same value. And when we won, and we won against kind of all of our top tier competitors, we noticed a theme, which was, well, they really gravitated towards our story. They really liked the vision we were heading, but they also saw that they could go sell, win, and compete in 2025, right? And we were going to drive an integrated automated experience, right? And so that was just like, you see that, and I got to see that. So it was one thing to inherit some partners, but it was another thing to sign some new partners, and then go look at the existing partners, and then ones we just signed, and say, okay, what works here and what doesn't. So you had a better database to go kind of look at than I did if I just walked in without knowing as much as I knew in the very beginning to say, well, this works or this doesn't work, because you didn't really know, and you didn't have the data points to definitively say what was or wasn't working. We just knew it wasn't working as well as it should be. So we've seen partnerships work in both directions. So that gives us a lot more confidence about what does work. And so if you have a product alignment, having product alignment, so our VP of product is in early, or our CTO is in an early parts of a lot of our partner conversations. And then we also have a commercial aspect. So if we're going to do this, and if we agree on this, then how do we go commercialize it together?
What's our go-to-market?
Ideally, we do that before we sign a contract, because you do that afterwards, and then they're like, well, why aren't we selling stuff?
Why are we doing this? That makes sense. Yeah. So doing the diligence up front, getting the right people involved on both sides. And then what's that rhythm been like for you as far as with your partners? Are you checking in quarterly, weekly?
With some, we do every other week every other week sales calls. I mean, it depends on the partner. So we try to go morph to them as best we can. Again, we're the small one, right? But
and are you driving that, or you have a partner team?
Correct.
That rolls up to you. Okay. And right.
Unlimited resources.
Yeah. The 500 people that make up that team.
Yeah.
So that individual, or those individuals, are they the ones typically doing the weekly cadence or whatever that cadence is? And then you have identified a couple of key relationships, or are you playing more a day-to-day role with your partner team?
So we have, so we have on our client success side and client experience side, people that are working around any IT, so any integration project, making sure that stays on track, and any like if there's a product dependency, then we have that as one kind of work stream. which sales may be a part of to just listen in, especially from our side, just to make sure how it's going. And then typically separately, we will have a sales component as well, which could be, ideally we have a structured meeting, but then we get a lot of like, hey, we got this lead came up, let's talk about it and go. So we see both, and we see on the sales side, but and we're starting to get into like a centralized project management office where we can go, whether it's a product or it's an integration, we can standardize how we run these projects for our sake, so we can be aligned, execute, deliver on what we say we're going to deliver. So that's a newer kind of development around the need of like, we've seen good and we've seen not so good. Let's standardize around how we're doing it. So
anywhere within the company. So it doesn't have to be
correct.
Okay. Yeah.
Correct.
So it could apply to like even sales process or anything.
Yeah. Yeah. It tends to be, for now, it's tending to be more around the technical projects that we're doing, but yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah. I've seen more of that centralized kind of PMO function across the entire company. Cool.
Yeah. So that's something that we're actively standing up now.
Gotcha. I know I have like a ton more questions and we're kind of coming up on time soon, but just
I thought
quickly.
You said a half day.
Yeah. Well, this is the first part of chapter one.
Chapter one, that's right.
So for you you are part of a venture-backed entity.
Yes.
Talk about that a little bit. Like why is that different? How is that different than private equity or the publicly traded world? What's the biggest difference?
I would add into that, describe what your relationship or your engagement would be at the board level.
Yeah, good point.
So I've been part of a VC company now, and then I was of course part of a publicly traded company, right? The publicly traded company, you get on a really good 90-day rhythm.
Yeah.
It is that quarter ends and that's great. You got a great quarter. That's cool. What have you done for me lately? And that was the norm for, 10 years, 40 quarters, right? More than that. This is, we still care about quarter and quarter performance, quarter success. We have a very active ongoing dialogue with our board, and in the true sense of they're there to help us out, right? They've been through these experiences. They've been through all of, starting a company from nothing, a lot of them, and are there to go support us in various capacities. So there are some that I talk to more than once a month. Some I talk to, once a month or right before the board meeting to make sure my story makes sense.
Yeah.
I can get twisted up in my head. My thoughts can be very, I really want to make sure I've got my story down. And then, we have I'm part of a quarterly board update. So we update on the growth progress once a quarter. And then we do financial progress updates, on a monthly basis.
And you joined Payground at the end of 23. Is that right?
That's correct. Yeah.
And when you joined, just guide us a little bit. Did you have a discussion either with the CEO or the board or a combination thereof in terms of what type of dynamic and relationship you wanted to have with board members?
I had a discussion with our CEO. I didn't have any discussion with the board before I joined.
Okay.
But I had a discussion with the CEO about, more asking questions. What's the dynamic like and how is it working? And admittedly for me at that time, I had some like board interaction at my previous role. It was a very different dynamic, purely private. There's no VC involved. And so it's very different. And so that was really what my questions were, just trying to understand that going into something that was new. And it's been a process, a learning process. And in the thing that you've learned is like, they're there to help you get better at doing that, right? At reporting it, telling your story, and where things are off, making sure you're refocused. And those things can be intimidating, especially if you are competitive and you've had a lot of success. It's like, well, a lot of times you're like, man, this is unnatural or uncomfortable. But that too, like many things, feels like it's a continued work in progress of just how I get better at that. But
I asked that question. Look, I'll be candid here. I didn't always do a great job when I was stepping into a leadership role of either asking or pushing for the relationship I would want with the board versus the executive team. And I say that I probably had an expectation, hey, this is just how it's going to work. I'm going to develop a relationship with these board members. I'm responsible for all of the go to market. They will want to hear from me. I want to talk to them. But I have seen in hindsight that if I was not intentional about understanding what the expectation the CEO had in terms of my relationship with the board, that came back and bit me in the rear. And I would say, weigh in here, Andy, but I would say to our listeners, as you step into these senior executive roles, there is a lot of value, especially when you're in a VC backed company or a PE backed company. If you own the number, you should probably make sure that you have a voice in a conversation on a regular basis with the board and understand how they're thinking about that number and how they're thinking about growth, not just more so unilaterally, you're flowing it up per se.
Yeah, I would say the relationship that you develop is important. It's been really, really good learning for me. Because you're like, okay, there's a founder. They invested in the founder, the belief in the founder, what they could do, and I wasn't there for that. So you're coming along like mid journey, right? And so you need to go form your own relationship and your own dynamic with some of those board members that
and they're all different, right? Every board is different.
It's an asset that you can use to make yourself better, to make the company better. So it's like it's there for you to use. For a while, I was like, okay, how do I use it?
Mm-hmm.
It's not,
and they do want to help. Like my interactions have been largely positive over the years. So like, there's a genuine desire to help. The actual desire to help may vary depending on who that person is. But I've had board members that have opened doors, and they will go out with us and help sell. If they've got relationships, take full advantage of that.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's one of those things that it's not something that I'd ever had before as an asset that you have in your sales leadership tool bag, right? So like anything, you're learning, and you got to learn quick on how do you use this and how do you go take full advantage of it and how do you work with them?
Yeah. What guide us a little bit. So as Chief Commercial Officer, are you responsible for setting the growth number, ultimately the forecast, or how does that work? Do you work hand in hand with the CFO or with the CEO to say, hey, for 2025, this is the revenue projections that we're going to go achieve, or the bookings projections that we're going to go achieve?
Yeah, it's with the CFO and the CEO, right?
Yeah.
I think there's better process that I know we can have around our forecasting. And by that, I mean reforecasting on a more regular basis. I think we can do better, but setting that number and understanding, well, how long to revenue activation by size, right, varies for us. And so, we use that kind of model to go say, okay, well, this is what we have to sell for this year. And this is what we turn on. And we try to put our process that we have every other week around, are we on target, off target? And if we're off, what do we need to do? And being very, very intentional with our actions around signing revenue and activating revenue.
So at the end of the day, you, the founder and the CFO, are collaboratively building the revenue model for whether a look forward to the next year. You probably have a quarterly breakdown, the trajectory that you're trying to hit, et cetera. But that's a process that you go through, the three of y'all.
Yes.
As part of your planning process.
Yes. Yeah. And then they'll go through additional processes around budget approval. Yeah. So they'll go and do budget approval process with our board. So we meet around, the sales numbers, our current, our current book, what's an implementation. And so we can put together a forecast, and then they'll go and, we go go through a budget approval process as well.
So as we come here close to the end, and I do have a surprise question I did not run by James.
Oh,
but
I can't wait.
So edge of your seats. It's actually going to be for both of y'all. But Andy, the journey you've been on, you've gone from individual contributor to a leader to stepping out of a big co into a private company, and now chief commercial officer for a VC-backed digital health payments-oriented organization. What would be guidance, words of advice that you would give to our audience, especially those who are probably in the individual contributor sales leadership role? What are the things that they should be doing to put themselves in a position to ultimately be where you are today?
Man.
Other than testing the healthcare system by having 4 kids.
Yeah. Have a ton of kids.
You may choose to do that.
Like
generate a bunch of medical bills.
It's going to create enough, enough bills every month that you need to go.
You're going to be motivated. That's for sure.
That's better than, nothing, no more motivating factor.
Funny, the sales managers over the years that I've had, they always seemed a little happier, like after I had another kid, because maybe they just knew like, oh, Canary's going to be even more hungrier now.
Yeah, he's going to be hungrier.
Yeah.
Man, that's, one, have a good mentor or have more than one mentor, right?
That's great advice.
You're not going to do it alone. And I was lucky, to have good leaders that really, really not just like promoted me, but like helped me go get better, right? Because once you think you've arrived, reality hits you in the face and you've got a lot more to learn. And so that was kind of always one of the things that was, I was told and learned early on, which was like who you work for and who helps you early on in your career has such an impact. And, I was fortunate to have like good people that really supported me and people that still to this day, I can pick up the phone and call and just say, hey, I want to bounce something by you. I got a question. And, there's probably a handful of people that I would call so that to me is always so invaluable because it's like, there are moments in your career, different points in your career where like, you need to weigh on somebody else that's been there. So that's one.
That's great advice.
Go get a mentor.
Or be a mentor.
Yeah. Pay your medical bills, probably number 2, James.
And some sequence of timing.
I feel like I'm going to be getting a lot more phone
really
calls.
Faster.
I think Andy is actually just going to send you a link to this app.
I'm very concerned
Payground. You
now.
download
I'm going to be getting some.
Andy, I want you to know, I already have it on my phone. I've got Payground.
There we go.
There you go. So I did my research, James.
Suck up, Doug.
The learning, the constant trying to learn and like trying to go get better to say, okay, I'm here. What do I need to learn? What skills do I need to have that I don't have? That, because I encountered the other thing you encounter throughout were people that were like, well, I deserve to be at this level, or I need to be. This sense that like I hit my number, I did whatever, and therefore I should be a manager, a leader. And instead of saying, well, what is it that I need to do to get there, or what skills am I missing to get there? It's like that's really what it is. What do you need to do? And then be ready to do those things, because you may not want to hear it. It may not be fun, and feedback.
That's a powerful statement right there. And I just would say that back to our audience is, and I'd break that into 2 parts. One, you never start learning. And I would actually go so far as to say, the further you go in your career and the higher you go, the more you need to learn.
Yes.
The more you need to actually push yourself to learn new things versus think that you've learned most of the things. And then there's no such thing as I deserve. It is, what am I doing to earn? What am I doing to put myself in position? Not, I deserve this. I should get this. And I would say modeling that back to our teams is a powerful thing if we want them to reciprocate that behavior.
Yeah.
All right.
There's probably a lot more, but those 2 things come to mind.
I think that's great advice. All right. So here's my fun, catchy question. And this actually goes out to both of y'all. So I know you've not played each other, 2 titans of youth league football coaching here in the Kansas City Metro, and you may never see each other on the field. But Andy, I'm going to start with you. If you were playing James, what's the trick play you would roll out to make sure you win the game? And James,
he's not going to tell you that.
Same question to you.
Trick play, Doug.
Oh, come on. Our listeners need to know, what's the trick play you would roll out? What's in your...
Anytime we've tried to do, this is we're talking third grade flag.
Yeah, that's right. Your Statue of Liberty.
Yeah. So anything we've tried there has never worked. So I'll caveat.
So maybe the trick play is just run it up the middle.
Yeah, it is like, if we do the basics right, that's our best chance for success. So the trick play, in the flag world, I've always tried to see if we can't, like, the reverse and the reverse pass is really
when executed properly.
Yeah,
it's a beautiful thing, but when one little thing goes wrong, it could be a disaster.
I'm not asking you to tell all your secrets. Just give us.
I'll grab my more recent. I got to brag on my kids. I'll grab my more recent picture here.
Division champions
of the kids. We're so proud of them. And step one is get two really good assistant coaches. One is our offensive coordinator, who's brilliant, and the other is our defensive coordinator, who's slightly crazy but awesome. So it makes my job really easy as like the cruise ship director. But I would say I'll take a play from we scrimmaged. So at the time we were fourth grade. Was last season, and we were at a practice, and this other team showed up of like sixth graders, right? So they're big kids. Like, let's scrimmage, we'll get better. And they kept getting these really big yardage plays on us. And their coach told us, he's like, yeah, one of our players is over there, not in the huddle. So they kept a player not off the field, but on the field, but not in the huddle. So they would break the huddle. Our kids would line up, man or zone, didn't matter. And they're just looking, and they don't see that there's another player almost on the sideline that then gets wide open for the big pass play. So I may try to run that one. I've never run it against another team, but it was really a brilliant idea, unless of course they spot that extra player.
I've been told, I don't know that this is true, but I've been told that Mahomes has actually been listening to our episodes.
Big time. Big time.
So don't be surprised if you see that get picked up.
We have a huge
next season in the Chiefs offense.
Yeah, the fumble Rooskies got nothing on us. So nothing on that. So man, Andy, and we always ask people like, hey, if you got a big client coming in, board member, whoever, you got one chance to take them for barbecue, where would you take them? So we got to ask that. What do you got? One chance. One shot. Cue the Eminem music.
What's my spot?
Yeah.
So I would probably go Q39.
Yeah. All right.
Now,
fantastic. Solid. Can't go wrong with Q39.
It's all about the brisket for me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Although I would argue they have some of the best burn-ins.
Isn't that
I like
brisket?
Their sauces too. They have good sauce.
I'd say, it's the burnt part of the brisket. But yes.
Beautiful.
Yeah. That's fair. It's, every part of the brisket is great.
What are other people? Yeah. What's the common?
So last season, our clear winner was Joe's gas station.
Although Q39 was a fast follow.
I think Q39 maybe already doing well this year.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed. Andy, this has been fantastic. Thank you for sharing your experiences, your insights with us. Congratulations. You're continuing to have quite a ride. And I just would say I do very much identify with the mission you described at Payground. The consumer, the patient, needs as much help as they can get. Thank you for spending the time with us.
And good luck.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
We'll see you on the football field.
All right. We'll see you.
Go get them.
Yeah.
Andy Rellihan, ladies and gentlemen. Go check him out.
Thank you for listening. We are excited to bring new episodes out each week. We are incredibly grateful to our guests and our listeners. Let us know what you think by commenting on the episodes. We are proudly sponsored by the upper right corner, which provides advice on strategic growth, including growth assessments and strategy, go-to-network planning, sales leadership and team coaching, and fractional leadership roles. For more, visit theupperrightcorner.com. Waypoint Healthcare Solutions is also proud to sponsor the Counterweight podcast. Waypoint HCS is a focused consulting organization helping health systems, providers, and organizations to develop and implement patient engagement strategies. Waypoint HCS provides strategic consulting and patient engagement technology guidance and selection. Waypoint also helps support implementation and ongoing program management. For more, visit Waypoint HCS's LinkedIn page or waypointhcs.com. Thank you to our guests and our listeners. As always, you can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Subscribe, like, and follow, and we look forward to joining you again next Wednesday for another episode of The Counterweight.